Shalom, shalom, mashpacha. First off, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High, whose name is Yahweh, Ba'ashem Mashiach Yahweh Shai. Many people have been asking me about some of the Hebrew prayers and words that I've posted about, that I've used, and about the alphabet and the different versions of Hebrew and so on and so forth. So it would probably take me hours and hours to explain all of that. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is give y'all, I guess what you could call an intro to Hebrew, right? To the Aleph Bet, to the alphabet, to some of the history, some of the types of Hebrew, a couple artifacts I'm gonna go over, and then I'll give you a few common beginner words for you to learn, and I'm gonna show y'all basically how you can translate some of the words from modern Hebrew into Paleo Hebrew, right? Which, like, I have this that's in my Bible. This will be the modern Hebrew, right? And this will be Paleo Hebrew. So there's many different forms of Hebrew, or what people call Hebrew, but the three types we're gonna look at in order of age, beginning with the oldest, is the ancient Hebrew, which uses symbols as letters. For example, here we have the Aleph, or the A, right, which is represented by an ox head, which is the first letter when in the ancient Hebrew. Then here we have a Hey, or an H, which is represented by a man with his arms raised, right, like this, almost in the shape of an English letter H, which is the fifth letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And then here we have the Ayin, or the letter I in English, and it's represented not coincidentally by an eye, right, by an eyeball. So that's just a couple of the letters from the oldest form of Hebrew, which is why it's referred to as ancient Hebrew by most scholars and people in general, right? So I'm not really going to focus on that form of Hebrew, simply because it is the most primitive and nobody really uses this form anymore, to my knowledge at least. So then we have the Paleo Hebrew, which is a newer form, right, which you can see here. This is the YHWH, right? And like I said, this is the newer form, but was still used in the Old Testament times, as you're going to see in a bit, because there's artifacts that even say the house of David on them, as an example, right? So Paleo Hebrew is the language that I strongly suggest you learn and use, especially in prayer, whether you're brand new to this truth or whether you've been in the truth for some time now, because like it says in the intro, or in the prologue to Ecclesiasticus, otherwise known as Sirach, it says, "For the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated into another tongue," English for example, "have not the same force in them," right? So Hebrew has more force, it has more power in it than other languages, especially when it comes to the scriptures, because it is the language that was used to write most of the original texts, right? So being able to say a prayer, for example, or at the least saying the Most High and His Son's name and a few other common words is good, and is going to be really beneficial for you to know, right? So this is the Paleo Hebrew Aleph Bet, or alphabet, right, which is read from right to left, as opposed to English, which is left to right, right? So now I'm going to read it with the sounds that each letter makes. So this is A, Ba, Ga, Da, Ha, Wa, Za, Cha, Ta, Ya, Ka, La, Ma, Na, Sa, I, Ba, Taza, Kwa, Ra, Sha, Da. So there's 22 letters in total, and as you can see, Paleo Hebrew is written in a more square form, which is why some people refer to it as block Hebrew, right? So here we can see this form of Hebrew on a Judean half shekel, right, which was used centuries and centuries and centuries before Yahushua came. Then we have this stone, which is known as the Tel Dan stone, which was discovered in northern Israel around, I believe it was around 1993, and it was believed to be made between 870 and 750 BC, right? So it was almost 3,000 years ago that it was believed to have been dated back to. So now this stone is really Yapa evidence or proof of the Bible. Yapa means beautiful in Hebrew, by the way, so that's another word you can learn. So if we look at it here, reading it right to left, right, it's an M-L-K, right, pronounced ma-la-ka. Then it's a Y-S-H-R-A-L, pronounced Ya-Sha-Ra, and then La, right? So the top line says Malak Yasharal, or Malak Yasharala. So Malak means king in Paleo Hebrew, and Yasharala means Israel, right? So the top line translated to English would be King Israel, or King of Israel, right? So now let's look at the bottom line right here that's highlighted. It said it's a B or Ba, Y, and then a TH, right? So it says Bayath. Then it's a D, W, D, right? Dawada. So it says on the second line, it says Bayath Dawad. Bayath means house in Hebrew, right? And Dawad, which is the Hebrew way of saying David. So these two lines of the stone say Malak Yasharala Bayath Dawad, meaning King of Israel, house of David, right? Which like I said is really beautiful, extra non-secular evidence confirming the existence of not only the nation of Israel back in these days almost 3,000 years ago, but it's also evidence of King David as the king of Israel, right? Just like stated in the Bible. So there's many other artifacts that we could look at, but for the sake of time, let's just look at this one more in Paleo Hebrew. So this is known as the Los Lunas Decalogue stone, right? So this stone, as you can see, is a large boulder, and it's on the side of what's known as Hidden Mountain near Las Lunas, New Mexico, right? About 35 miles south of Albuquerque, New Mexico. And it has an inscription carved into the flat side of this stone, right? Into the flat side of this boulder. And it's also known as, you could look it up as the Las Lunas Mystery Stone or Commandment Rock. So this rock actually has been authenticated by certain professors. I forget their names or which schools they represent, but it's been authenticated as the oldest 10 commandments in Paleo Hebrew that has ever been found anywhere, right? So if we zoom in a little bit, you can clearly see the letters YHWH in Paleo Hebrew, right, which translates to Yahweh, the name of the Most High God, right, which is just one of the many proofs that the Most High's name is in fact Yahweh, spelled YHWH, right? And I know the other three most popular names probably that people think is the Most High's name is Ahaya, which there's no archaeological proof to back that up whatsoever. And in reality, Yahweh, Ahaya is Yahweh in the first person, right? Then Yahweh, which is impossible because there's no E in Paleo Hebrew, right? So Yahweh is actually just a modern Hebrew translation of Yahweh, or a transliteration of Yahweh. And Yahweh or Yahuwah, which changes the letter W and replaces it with the U, right? Which is what they do in modern Hebrew. So that's actually just another modern translation, right? So if we look at the Decalogue stone again, though, we can see what is known as the Tetragrammaton, which is YHWH, Yahweh, right? And it's here 3 separate times, right? Here, here, and here. So The old Hebrew alphabet, also called Paleo Hebrew, right, is said to have been adopted by the Greeks, right? So if we look at the first 5 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, which are Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, and Hey, these same letters adopted by the Greeks became Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, and E silent, which means simple E, right? So as you see here, the top is the Paleo Hebrew, which is read right to left, right? And then you have the Old Greek on the bottom, which is left to right. So the Greeks basically, just like they did to the ancient Israelites' land and many other customs and traditions, they just stole the Hebrew alphabet as well, right? So now, over the centuries, these ancient Greek letters evolved into modern Greek forms, right? Kind of how Old English evolved into modern English, right? Old English didn't have the letter J, for example. Now it does have the letter J, right? Giving you the false name of our Messiah, Jesus, right? So just like that, the Greek letters evolved into their modern Greek forms, as you can see here on the top. And then, as most of you know, after the fall of the Greek Empire, the Romans came into power, right? And there, on the bottom, you can see the modern Roman alphabet. So as you can see, our English alphabet is actually Roman, right? And because the Romans adopted the Greek alphabet, we are able to see our own modern English alphabet in these ancient Hebrew turned Greek letters, right? The A, B, C, D, and E. So even the name alphabet is actually stolen from the Hebrew names for the first and second letters, right? Because the first letter is Aleph, the second letter is Bet, right? Aleph, Bet. And then they took that and called your modern English ABCs the alphabet, right? Aleph, Bet to alphabet. So further proving how almost everything is stolen from our ancient Hebrew Israelite ancestors, man. It's crazy if you really look into history, right? They stole or bit off of everything good that we made or followed, man. So then here we have the Hebrew Aramaic alphabet, right? Which was said to be used around the 5th to 8th century BC. Different people give you different timelines, but as you can see, it no longer resembled the old Hebrew it came from, right? And it's this Aramaic square type script that was adopted during Israel's captivity in Aramea, right? Also known as the Assyrian captivity, or which Aramea, the Aram is a region located in present-day Syria, right? So Syria is actually named after Assyria, mentioned in Ezra's, in the Assyrian captivity of Israel, which is where the Aramaic Hebrew comes from, right? Where the name of it comes from, and was also used during the time of the Babylonian captivity afterwards, right? So now this brings us to the modern Hebrew Aramaic alphabet, right? Which is now being used by the Israelis, right? That live in Israel right now. Not Israelites, Israelis, who are not the real Jews or the real Hebrew Israelites by blood, but are the synagogue of Satan, according to Revelation 2:9 and Revelation 3:9, right? So this form of modern Hebrew continued to evolve and change into the modern letters that most so-called Hebrew speakers are familiar with today, the modern Hebrew, right? But as you can see, it's far from the real ancient or Paleo Hebrew that was used by our ancestors up until the Assyrian, Babylonian, and Persian captivities, right? So just a little extra piece of history. You can even look up the modern Hebrew to research it for yourself, to see how it's been changed and altered by non-Israelites. And if you do look it up, start by looking up this guy, right? So his name is Eliezer ben Yehuda. He is known as the father of modern Hebrew, right? Of modern Hebrew. He was a Jewish man, aka a fake Jew, that was a follower of it was called Haskalah, or the Enlightenment movement, right? His first published writing was called The Burning Question, or Sha'alat Hasha'ah, right? The Burning Question. It was published in 1789, and it called for the immigration to the land of Israel, and it called for the creation of a national spiritual center of the Jewish people there in Israel, right? The Jewish people, not the Jews. So in reality, the so-called father of modern Hebrew, Ben Yehuda, was also the real father of cultural Zionism, right? Which was later popularized by Akkad Ha'am, right? So if you know anything about Zionism, you know that it's actually satanic. It's completely against the Most High, and is in reality just another form of Satanism, right? So saying all that to say this, Paleo Hebrew is the purest form of Hebrew that we have, or that we have history of, right? And that we can use to try to reclaim our Hebrew language, because we sure as hell can't trust some fake Jew, non-Israelite Zionist on how to speak our own language, which is what you're doing, and many people are doing when they're using the modern Hebrew, right? So now I'm going to show y'all real quick the first Hebrew word that you should learn, or that you gotta learn, right? So the first word you should learn in Paleo Hebrew is this, Abba, right? Because it's the first two letters of the Aleph Bet, or the alphabet, right? It's the Aleph and the Bet. So A and Ba, A and B, which means father, Abba, father, right? So it's no coincidence that this starts off the Hebrew alphabet. This is just showing you that everything is spiritual, right? So this is showing you that everything starts with the Father, with the Most High Yahweh, right? The Father of all things, seen and unseen, no matter what it is. Whether you're having good times, you thank the Father. Whether you're going through something, you run to the Father. So I suggest you start writing this, right? The alphabet, the Aleph Bet in Paleo Hebrew, as many times as you want daily until you get it down. And then when you start memorizing it, then start on the modern Hebrew, just so you can learn how to translate it. You're gonna need to know the modern letters at least, so you can translate it into the Paleo Hebrew, like I'm gonna show you right now, right? So this is the blueletterbible.org, right? So if you're not familiar with it, I suggest you get familiar with it, because it's a very good source to use when translating and just looking up verses and seeing the Hebrew meanings and the Strongs and everything like that. So right here, you type in any verse in the search bar and it'll pull it up, right? So here I'm gonna pull up Exodus 15:3 as an example. So you then click on tools right here, and it brings up the verse in Hebrew, right? Then you click on the first, I'm gonna click on the first word in the verse, which is the Lord, right? Click on the number under Strongs, and it gives you the word in Hebrew and the definition of the word a little bit further down, right? So we now have the word Yahweh, right? Because anytime you see Lord in all caps, it actually means Yahweh, or it was written as the Most High's name, Yahweh in Hebrew, right? But look at it right here. It's showing it in modern Hebrew, right? So you then have to translate it back into the older Paleo Hebrew to get the correct pronunciation, right? So you can do this with any verse you want, to play around with it and get used to doing translations. But at first, you got to start with learning the alphabet, right? Make sure you do things decently and in order, like 1 Corinthians 14:40 says. So last thing, here's some basic words in case y'all want to screenshot them, because I know it's on a daily basis that people are asking me what certain Hebrew words mean, right? So here's some of the basic words that you can learn and that you can learn how to write to get you going on the Paleo Hebrew, right? So I hope this was an edifying lesson, and I hope it motivates you to learn the lashawan qadash, or the holy tongue, or the holy language, right? Lashawan meaning language or tongue, qadash meaning holy. So all praise to the Most High, Yahweh, Ba'asham, Hamashiach, Yahweh Shai, Shalom.